everyone. I'm joining Qasim Rashid. You know him, you love him. You have to subscribe to his Substack, and he's another person who said you look tired, which is a nice way of saying you look terrible. Go sleep. But it's the work continues. Today is October 7th, 2025. There are multiple fires all around the world, but of course, it's the commemoration, anniversary, reminder of Hamas's terror attacks. But then, after Hamas's terror attacks, Israel has spent the past 2 years engaged in a genocide and an ethnic cleansing. And we are dealing with fascists both abroad and here at home. And Qasim has a piece out on October 7th. And Qasim has been one of the few people who's been very open about condemning Israel and Israel genocide. First world problems, Qasim. We've lost a few opportunities. I'm sure you have as well. But you have said you have to be morally consistent, that you cannot speak out against Donald Trump and MAGA's authoritarian impulses, but without speaking out and condemning against Netanyahu's impulses. And I'm sure you've seen yesterday Mallory McMurrow, who's running for Senate in Michigan. She finally came out and quasi called it a genocide. You're seeing Chris Van Hollen call it ethnic cleansing. You've seen Bernie Sanders call it a genocide. You still have you have 27 last time I checked Democrats who voted to stop sending arms. I think Ro Khanna told me there's like 25 Democrats, maybe 26, who call it a genocide. But that's still not enough. And I'm sure you saw the latest poll that said that the majority of American Jews are not with Netanyahu. More and more people are calling it genocide. But the leadership, the establishment, is not there. And instead of doing their part to end the genocide, now you have literally David Ellison spending $150 million for Barry Weiss to come in and run interference for Israel and the oligarchy. A lot to unpack, but I give it to you.
A lot to unpack there, and I think that's why it's so important that we continue to have these conversations. And if you're jumping in from my cohort of Let's Address This, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Wajahat. He's doing phenomenal work, and he's been a morally consistent icon in this space for a long time, and I appreciate everything he does. You know, Wajahat, I had coffee with a friend of mine this morning who has friends in the National Guard, and now that the National Guard is being deployed in Illinois, he mentioned to me that his friends and family are struggling on what to do. And the point I made to him is the same point I make regarding this genocide that's happening in Gaza. Is that what is your red line? At what
Yeah.
point will you say that this is just not right? I can't stand by this anymore, because they're going to threaten your paycheck. They're going to threaten your security. They're going to threaten your integrity, your morality. But this is what you would expect of people who perpetuate genocide. It's all projection. And I said, for me, the red line is actually quite clear. It's due process of law. It's what the Fifth
Mm.
Amendment tells us, that no person shall be denied their liberties without due process of law. And if we're going to trample over that domestically, then we sure as hell are going to trample over that internationally. If you can sit silent on the genocide in Gaza, then guess what? You don't have a moral platform to condemn the Trump regime bombing boats from Venezuela, claiming that they're drug traffickers. First of all, drug traffickers don't deserve the death penalty. Second of all, if you're just going to arbitrarily allow that, there's really no moral difference, because it all comes down to this fundamental point of due process of law. And then just the misrepresentation from this regime is astronomical. I've been at the Broadview ICE plant right here in Illinois protesting these ICE fascists. I've been several times now. I'm going to continue to go. And lo and behold, Pam Bondi comes out and says 200 violent rioters attacked these ICE plants and we had to defend ourselves. I was literally there. We had nothing of any violent force with us whatsoever. No guns, no rocks, no bottles, nothing. We were fired upon by these ICE fascists. Every single escalation you're seeing is coming from ICE. And so this is why I say to folks that you need to step out of your comfort zone, because the reality is that staying in that comfort zone is the boiling frog syndrome. And before you know it, it'll be too late. You need to step out. And so, and I say this not as somebody who is speaking out of turn. I've talked extensively. I've had just this summer, if a judge filed a bar complaint to get me stripped of my law license because I condemned the denial of due process of law. I've had the Canary Mission send me actual threats of violence with my home address, that they're going to expose me and wipe me off the face of the earth. I've gotten death threats. I've had to report to the FBI. And I've had hundreds of people, cancel their subscriptions. But for me, this is really fundamentally what it comes down to. And I'll send it back to you, Jahat, that what is your red line? Think about what the red line is. And I promise you, if you stick to that, the short term pain that you'll feel will give way to long term catharsis and pride in yourself that you did the right thing. You stood on the right side of history. Your children will thank you. Your future self will thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we death threats are now. Gosh, it's one of those interesting things where death threats, trolling, ugly racist messages are just part of the business, even though they shouldn't be. And
Yeah.
if you've been in this game for a long time and you have brown skin like you and me, or if you're black, I have Joy coming on right after you. Joy and Reed, she gets it all the time. You just get used to it, you get numb to it, but you shouldn't get numb to it, right? Because it's not normal. And we've seen a rise in stochastic terrorism ever since Donald Trump descended the bronze fake golden staircase. The threats and violence against his enemies, including judges, law enforcement, media, critics, and now what we've been warning about, Qasim, for the longest time. When it was black and brown bodies, people didn't care. Let's be honest. It goes back, well, to the beginning of America, but specifically in modern history, goes back to the America's choice in the war on terror. ICE was created after the war on terror. Patriot Act was created as a result of the war on terror. Mass surveillance got normalized. The registry against Muslims, right? And we kept warning because we're on the same age. This will be used against American citizens.
Right.
You have to be careful about giving up your liberties for the illusion of feeling safe.
Yeah.
And now let's just talk about because you're in Chicago. Some news about ICE folks in Chicago. ICE kept most offices open and shut down, but the ones inspecting detention centers, they closed that one down. So much for cruelty. CBS is reporting that ICE agents have repeatedly made fake 911 calls each time police found no threat. By the way, that's a felony. Uh, Chicago News Guild is now suing ICE for attacking journalists in Broadview facility. ICE in Chicago, we played this video on Democracy Ish. Just they were stuck in traffic. They got pissed off, tear gassed. Ended up tear gassing a kid, a baby. Ended up tear gassing Chicago police.
Right.
We have seen videos of ICE zip tying children. Folks, they are what we've been saying for a while, the Gestapo. What we've been saying is that they are the masked, armed guard of Donald Trump, willing to do anything and everything for their daddy and king. They want to crack skulls. And now they have been unleashed against straight up, let's be honest, Qasim, white Americans. And what
Yeah.
I have said is white lives matter more in America, white tears matter more, white blood matters more. And this is where we need Grand Tifa to step up. We need Grand Tifa. We need middle-aged white men and white women to step up and be at the front lines with black and brown folks. Because I do think America seeing ICE throw the 79-year-old white man to the ground, throw Cat Abu Ghazala to the ground. It isn't just black and brown skulls. Fascism comes for everyone. You're in Chicago. Tell me what you think.
This is this is the tip of the iceberg. What you're describing, Wajahat. There's a palpable fear here. I'm getting calls from parents and teachers almost on the regular, asking what they should be doing with their children because they're afraid of ICE showing up at schools and going after children. I've met with the administrators of my children's schools. I have three amazing children, my wife and I do. And I've had the hard conversation with them that what do you do when ICE shows up? And they have reassured me that they would go on lockdown. That should horrify everyone that
Right?
ICE has to be treated the same way you would treat a mass shooter to protect your children because we don't know what they will do to children. I often remind folks, and this is where I'm extraordinarily upset with the Biden administration as well, that under the previous Trump regime from 2016 to 2020, there are documented reports. The Guardian published a thorough article on this of nearly 5,000 documented cases of child sexual abuse of migrant children by ICE and Border Patrol. The Biden administration did nothing to prosecute those, nothing substantive. But what they did do was further increase ICE funding. And,
Yep.
and this is why I say it's not just enough to be anti Trump. We need to be pro justice. We need to hold politicians on the left accountable because this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And we're seeing the propaganda get more and more outlandish. ICE fascists were pursuing a woman who was being anti fascist. She was following these ICE fascists who are terrorizing our communities and just letting the public know where they are. They found her through social media. They tracked her down. They tried to run her off the road, and she
Y-
tried to drive away and escape. And now, I'm not advocating hit and runs at all. But the report from DHS and ICE is that 10 cars coordinated and attacked a DHS vehicle and they had to open fire in self-defense. The video shows nothing of the sort. The video shows an ICE vehicle ramming against her. She drove away. They said that shots were fired and Chicago police didn't do anything. And Chicago PD, who does not have a reputation of being a liberal leftist organization, said, "What the hell are you talking about? None of this happened." They're claiming that 10 people coordinated an attack on DHS and ICE. And guess what? They have zero arrests. Tell me how that functions. How does that even make sense? I feel like we're living in the Hunger Games. And so this is also why I encourage folks watching this to be deliberate about where you're getting your news and information from. If you see a press release by ICE or DHS, you can summarily conclude that 99% of it is propaganda, it's false. The only thing that's probably
Bullshit.
accurate is the date and time. But the reality is that this is where you need to invest in local speakers, activists, journalists, voices, because they're going to be able to give you the most correct information. And here's the last part I'll say about this. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that you get out there and stand in solidarity. I've said this repeatedly. We need messengers, not martyrs. No one is asking
Like,
you to go and take a bullet. I don't want anyone to take a bullet. I want you to just go stand in solidarity. That strength in numbers matters. We've been protesting peacefully at the Broadway facility, ICE facility, and over the last several weeks, what have we seen happen? We've seen them board up their facility, put up an illegal fence, put up stone barricades, try to deploy rubber bullets and pepper balls on us, force us to move down the street, shut down the entire street. Now they've implemented a curfew, all from our peaceful presence. So whoever is wondering what difference does it makes all the difference in the world. Show up, and if you haven't shown up before, DM me. I'll go with you. People going would love to have you there, but do not sit silent. We need you. We need your presence there badly, and the more the better.
Tomorrow, so Wednesday, at 1 p.m., I have Jen Budd, who's a whistleblower and a former Border Patrol agent, who's going to be joining me. And everything Qasim has just said, she says the same thing: the history of sexual abuse, the cover-ups, the lies. She's literally, folks. She's a whistleblower. She was there, and she'll break it down tomorrow. And what we just saw, another to back up Qasim's point, a woman shot by ICE has been released from custody. Body cam footage revealed an agent saying, "Do something, bitch," while holding his rifle at her. And the question then becomes, for how long will Americans take it? These 10,000 rogue, masked, armed ICE agents terrorizing them, where the bar is lowered, where many of them, some of them, excuse me, uh, are part of white nationalist groups, support Oath Keepers, support Proud Boys, support Donald Trump, literally do anything and everything with impunity, without impunity, excuse me, realizing nothing's going to happen to them. And literally just taking over cities, folks. This is the ICE and National Guard taking over cities. And yesterday, Donald Trump, I'm sure you saw, said he's open. He didn't close the door on invoking the Insurrection Act, something that we've been warning about on the left hook for months. In the summer, Stephen Miller used the word insurrection. He used the word invasion. The Insurrection Act allows the president then to federalize National Guard troops and unleash the military on American streets, and bypass the Posse Comitatus Act. Folks, he said he's open to doing it. He's creating enemies out of thin air. He is creating Antifa as a terrorist organization. Speak about Venezuela. He says we're at war now with drug cartels. There's no proof that these Venezuelans that he killed are members of drug cartels. He hasn't released any evidence. Their family members say they were fishermen, but he's engaged in extrajudicial assassination. And even if they were cartels, they're entitled to due process. And then I had Ken Klippenstein on, who talked about national security presidential memo 7, where now thoughts, words are indicators of left-wing violence, and that includes anti-ICE messages and anti-Christian messages. So he's creating on a weekly basis, Qasim. Trump and Stephen Miller are creating rack-back fires as a justification to crack down on dissent and move towards martial law. And you're seeing Chicago in particular and LA as, if you will, the laboratories. And it's very interesting to see what's going to happen, because he's going after kids. Communities are standing up and resisting. He's going after cops. And we're talking about fascism at home and abroad. And you know what this reminds me of, I'm sorry to make the comparison, but I've been there, is when masked, armed members of the military or law enforcement can just, with complete impunity, come and terrorize places. It reminds me of the West Bank.
And I've
Gotham.
been to the West Bank, and I've seen this firsthand. I've seen the military occupation, and I'm so glad you brought this up because it is a jarring experience. And I have one particular memory of several memories of this, but I have one memory. We were in Sheikh Jarrah, which, if you recall, a couple of years ago, there was a mass movement to save Sheikh Jarrah because you had these settlers, these illegal settlers, colonizers coming in and just taking homes of Palestinians. And the backstory was that they claimed that they had deeds to these properties that were certified by the Ottoman Empire, and they were sent to Turkish government. Turkish government said these are fraudulent. Here's all the reasons why they're fraudulent. And even if they were valid, they're 200 years old. How in the world are you going to come and take something that was from 200 years ago? Anyway, that's a side point. But I remember being there, speaking with Palestinians, and I'm with a group of U.S. military veterans and former Israeli IDF soldiers who had left the IDF and are now part of Breaking the Silence, an organization working to end the illegal military occupation of the West Bank. And we see a car driving down the road, and it's of an Israeli settler colonizer. And the car is driving not fast, but it's a car, and it's driving right into us. And I had to pull people out of the way to prevent from being run over by the car. He stopped, cursed at us, and then went on. And when I said to these Palestinian neighbors we were speaking to, why can't you do something about this? And I asked, fearing I already knew the answer was that if we call the authorities, they're going to arrest us for offending the sentiments of these Israeli settlers, for threatening them, by us standing here threatening them. This is the reality. And when you speak to these Israeli soldiers, these former Israeli soldiers breaking the silence, what they will tell you is that their training involved seeking out which Palestinian voices were speaking up for their own humanity in their own homes, on their own lands, and then targeting that person, torturing them, bombarding them with disinformation. And if they continue to speak up, then they would go into their home, ransack their home, destroy their home. And then they did something really interesting with jihad. If a person still had the audacity to speak up, you know what they did? They would kidnap that person for a few weeks, disappear them, and then bring them back and then treat them like they were royalty. And I got confused that why would they suddenly start treating this person who was antagonistic to them like royalty? And the point was to convince the other Palestinians that he had broken, that he had sold out, and that he could no longer be trusted. And this was a cycle of rinse and repeat. And these former Israeli soldiers who left the IDF and joined Breaking the Silence said, we began to realize that what we were doing was, in fact, criminal. These are war crimes. And I bring all this up because what we're seeing happening right now in Chicago is exactly that. Last week, ICE propelled from helicopters onto an apartment building of predominantly Black Chicagoans in the middle of the night, took children, many of them naked, out in the streets, elderly out in the streets, held them there for 3 hours with zip ties, bombarded their homes. No judicial warrant, no due process of law, but just terrorized these communities simply because they could. It is verbatim exactly what is the perpetual atrocity in occupied West Bank for the last 70 years. And what I want to emphasize to folks is if we want this to stop, it's going to require us to stop buying into the culture wars that billionaires want us to buy into. Demonizing trans people, demonizing immigrants, demonizing low income people, demonizing people on welfare. These are all strategies used to get us to hate one another and divide one another so that they can perpetuate the class war where wealth and income inequality is worse now than it's ever been. So my plea of everyone is find ways to work together in this space, because I promise you, this is not just about going after the left. This is going to eventually go after anyone and everyone who doesn't give fealty and loyalty to Donald Trump. And if you don't give fealty and loyalty enough, I promise you, you're going to be next on the list. Don't be on that list. Stand in solidarity with the rest of us and push back against this fascism while we still can.
I mean, look, they're talking about perp walking James Comey, Maureen Comey, his
Yep.
daughter was fired. They went after John Bolton, the FBI raid. Remember, folks, Mike Pence was running for his life on January 6th. Fascism comes for everyone, and we've been saying for a long time that what we, the United States of America, has supported through our funding, through our diplomacy, through our bombs in Gaza will come back, and it's coming
Right.
back. We have supported an occupation. We have supported violent settlers and settlements. We have supported this genocide. The Biden administration did, and the Trump administration did. And people didn't care because Palestinian lives, brown lives, Arab lives, Muslim lives don't matter. Let's be honest.
Right.
What's happening to Black folks? The crackdown for centuries. We didn't care, right? Oh, it's just gangs and criminal and inner city. Who cares? Because they're Black. What happened to undocumented immigrants? The Lake and Riley Act that Democrats supported, right? The deportation that, let's be honest, Obama even supported. Funding of ICE, expanding of ICE. You can't criticize ICE. We kept saying, sure you can. ICE didn't exist until the 21st century. ICE does not do border patrol. You do not need ICE. Lo and behold, people kept quiet. They said, yeah, go after those undocumented immigrants, go after the pro-Palestinian activists, go after the transgender. And within 8 months, folks, now you're seeing white skulls being cracked, white babies, white cops. Fascists come for everyone. And he is a cornered rat, Donald Trump is, that he's willing to chew through anything and everyone to stay in power. Now, with the big, beautiful bill, he has 10,000 ICE agents who now have the budget of a country. If you put ICE as a country, it has the military budget. It's like number 17 of all the countries. That's what ICE has now and has complete impunity to terrorize Americans, just like the IDF has complete impunity to terrorize Palestinians. And yet, I want to ask you a final question here, Qasim. Still, what more evidence do people need to see? Because I keep saying now every other day, I mean, we keep saying enough, end the occupation. It's a genocide. And slowly but surely, you're seeing Democrats being shamed into coming around. It's still not enough. What more do people need to see in Israel and in Palestine to say enough is enough? It's a genocide, especially Democratic leaders, because I have no faith in Republicans. And what more do people need to see at home to say abolish ICE?
I don't know if I have a clear answer to that, Wajahat. I really don't, because at the end of the day, it's undeniable. 2 plus 2 is 4 is undeniable. The Earth is round. Um, death and taxes, like all the metaphors that you can give, that this is genocide. That ICE is not making us safer. The evidence is there. You mentioned the Lake and Riley Act a minute ago. Lincoln Riley was brutally murdered by an undocumented immigrant. And in response to that, the right passed the Lincoln Riley Act, which denies due process, tramples upon our Constitution. Corporate Democrats went along with it. All this over the murder of an innocent person. And meanwhile, that same group that professes to care about innocent people is completely silent. I don't know if you saw this just last week. A white kid radicalized by Charlie Kirk took his car in New Jersey and drove 70 miles an hour and hit 2 girls who had rejected his advances and allegedly made fun of Charlie Kirk. He killed them in cold blood. Police gave him 15 tickets and let him walk, and then later said, "Oh, never mind. We actually meant to arrest you," and then found him a couple of days later and arrested him. Where is the act that recognizes this right wing white supremacist domestic terrorism, this anti-woman, this misogynistic patriarchal terrorism that we're seeing out there? And so this is the selective activism that is ultimately going to destroy our country. And I don't know if I have a clear answer of what's going to get people to wake up, but I will close with this message. I am not in despair. Despite everything, I am hopeful because I've seen what this country has overcome. I've seen what the American people have overcome. And that's what I ask folks to hold on to. Maintain that hope. Lean into people who are leading with hope. Don't buy into the doom scrolling and the despair that you see out there. Despite everything that I talk about as a human rights lawyer, I firmly remain hopeful and firmly remain positive for myself, for my children, for your children, for all our children, and for the next generation. Maintain that hope. Don't lose that, because that's how we fight back against fascism. And that's how we are going to make this a truly perfect union, more perfect union that it belongs and it deserves to be.
Yeah, folks, listen, we don't give in to despair and cynicism. Qasim and I have kids. You have to remain hopeful, but hope is a verb. It requires action. It's optimism with a plan. You can't be neutral in the face of fascism and genocide. You can't both sides it. And right now we're in it. Everything we warned about, it's the world's worst. I told you so. There are no prizes here, but we're all in it now, folks. And we have the numbers. I always want people to remember this. We have the numbers. And furthermore, this is a reckless, incompetent fascist regime. They are unpopular. They are sniping at each other. They are arrogant. They stumble over each other and their plans. Sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. They're reckless. And furthermore, he's negative double digits on the economy. His overreach is unpopular when it comes to the National Guard. This is a country that was born out of revolution, and it's a big country, folks. So there are more of us than there are of them. We don't need martyrs. I agree with Qasim. I always say that martyrs do nothing for me. You die young. I need you to live a long, healthy life, and I need you to be a grand Tifa. And I need you to be a joyful warrior, and everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a role to play, as we saw in Andor. A mom has a role to play, a teacher has a role to play, an organizer has a role to play, a politician has a role to play, a person who has some money has a role to play with economic boycotts. It's death through a thousand cuts. So all hands on deck. We have to resist the occupation abroad. We have to stop Israel's genocide. We have to also resist the occupation at home, and we have to resist this fascist regime, and we have to aim for reformation, not restoration. This is the age of reformation, folks. Qasim, as I let you go, and I'll bring on Joyanne Reed in a second, shamelessly promote yourself.
Thanks, brother. Always a pleasure to break bread with you. Virtually speaking, you can follow me at. I'll put it in the chat group. You can subscribe to me there. Let's address this. Qasim Rashid is a human rights newsletter. We publish daily content on the human rights issues that impact you that corporate media continues to ignore. Subscription is free. There's never a paywall. If you want to throw a few bucks a month as a cup of coffee or an annual sub, by all means, I welcome it because I'm not funded by billionaires. I'm funded by you. But I promise you, whether you become a paid or a free subscriber, there's never a paywall. There's no special access. Become a paid subscriber because you can afford it, never because you feel any compulsion to do so. Much love to all of you, and thank you all for your amazing support.
Take care, man. Everyone, this is the Left Hook. I'll be back in 1 minute. I'm jumping off, and I'm going to jump on with Joyanne Reed. So jump back in 2 minutes. Take care, everybody.